You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Rosebud Woman was developed in response to women's unaddressed needs for beautiful, luxurious products that provide relief and pleasure for all women, whether it be for period pain, perimenopausal woes, or menopause symptoms. Intimate wellness products are often designed to use with a sexual partner or medicalized to treat a diagnosed issue. Rosebud Women feels ceremonial, like I'm doing a beauty ritual while addressing my 50-year-old body's needs. Their everyday honor bomb is gynecologist tested and hormone-free. It hydrates, conditions, and replenishes intimate skin. It's excellent for pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, and any other hormonal changes. Use the affiliate link in my show notes for 20% off. You can check out their products at www.rosebudwoman, that's ROSEWOMAN.com. Check out all their beautiful products and use the affiliate code in the show notes. Staci Berkowitz is the author of Naked at 50, her memoir that invites you to let go of limiting beliefs, ditch the doubts, and step into the most fearless, unapologetic version of yourself. The year she turned 50, Staci made the bold decision to say yes to 50 new experiences. From wild, exhilarating adventures to transformative moments, her year of discovery is an invitation for you to kick fear to the curb and start living with more joy, passion, and purpose. Midlife is not the end of the road. It's the beginning of your boldest chapter yet. Let's dive right in. Tell us all about your book. Tell us all about what the book is about. Why is it called Naked at 50? Is it an erotica book? Is it a nonfiction book? What's it all about?
Okay, basically the last part of last year, so 2023, I was like, oh my goodness, in person, I teach fitness, I travel around the world solo, I'm good, like life is good, I'm doing all these cool things, but I had like this image in my mind that once I turned 50, like I'd be wearing a muumuu and I would be Blanche. No, Blanche was like the sexy one. I would be more Dorothy. And so I had to sit with it for like a couple months. And then I decided at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, I was like, no, I am not going to enter my 50th year in drag. So I decided that during the year I turned 50, so the entire 2024, I was going to do 50 new experiences I'd never done before. Some small, some big, but it was going to be this record of living life fully entering that 50th year. And so and so it was great. And so I started doing the experiences and I shared some of them on my podcast. And then about March came and I was like, I should be writing. This should be a book. There is a book here because I think there's enough people who are fearing their golden girl years. And I want to speak to them how to really take all my knowledge as a board certified coach and then also a fella what do you say fella, but as a woman, we don't have a word for that, do we?
We don't, no.
Make a word? Can we just make up a word, Kate? That like Felina?
A Fema 50? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it is Fema. Is that a word?
No.
It is now. You heard it here first.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just want everyone, men or women, really, who are coming to this age and to embrace it in the most healthy way possible. And to really just walk into it with a mindset that isn't so golden girl.
Yeah, absolutely. I would was right there with you, except my whole reevaluation of feeling, if I'm hearing correctly, I'm hearing that you felt disassociated from the idea of what it meant to be 50. And I started feeling that 40, 45, just as sort of like, how could it be that I'm this age and the images that I see on television are like Alice from the Brady Bunch, Murder, She Wrote, The Golden Girls, Edith Bunker, Mrs. Garrett on The Facts of Life. Like, I am not that person.
Garrett, was she 50?
I think that she was supposed to be like in her 50s. And I'm looking at you. I look at myself in the mirror. We're young, cool women. We are not done, disinterested, homebound in our house coats. Is not where we're at. I don't want to conceptualize myself and align myself with this idea that once you're over a certain age, the possibilities have dried up for you, because that is absolutely not true. And I really think Gen X women are changing that conversation.
It's not true because, and I think we read the script we're giving until we challenge it.
Right.
And I think our parents' age and their parents, they were reading the script given to them. And so I think now there's so many platforms out there that challenge scripts. So the the millennials and Gen Z and whatever the generation after that is what they're calling, their scripts, they're rewriting their scripts and they're deciding a lot more. I feel like they have a lot more say so in what they get, how they get to live. And I think Gen X, in so many ways, like even talking through like perimenopause and menopause, that was so hush, and like,
oh yeah,
have so much funding that goes to the reproductive part of women. But we had like such a tiny percentage that went through the perimenopause and menopause research to help women through this time. And it was kind of like, mom's just moody and sweating a lot, And then I think now, because Gen X doctors who are women they're in that stage now. They're like, how can I make a difference for women? And they're providing education. So you don't feel like such a freak when you're going through it.
Yeah.
So you're right. I agree. I echo what you're saying. I think Gen X is making the difference. So yay our generation.
Yep. Not to get too personal, like 10 seconds into the podcast, but where are you on your menopause journey?
Welcome to my HIPAA files. Okay, so I remember my first hot flash. It was takes me back to 2018. I was a health coach for a company, and I was the health coach for a very, very large hotel chain called Marriott Hotels. And I worked for a company called Cigna. And so I was on site, and we went to just a group of HR. I officed out of the HR area. And so I became friends with the people in HR, and we went out to celebrate birthdays, like March birthday. I mean, this is so vivid to me. And I was dating somebody at the time, and it was the only relationship I've ever been in that was really, really, really bad. Like he emotionally abused me in ways it's not even worth rehashing. I already rehashed it with my therapist. We're good on that. But it was just the stress level in my life was high. And so I'm mentioning that because stress can exacerbate menopause symptoms or perimenopause. So it's good to be aware of that. So we were at this lunch, we were having Mexican food, and all of a sudden I just like broke out. I was like so hot. And I thought like a plate of fajitas was walking by me. Like I thought like the heat of the fajitas, and I'm like looking around and there's no fajitas. And I like asked a couple of people sitting by me, what was it? I didn't even really know about hot flashes. I was in my 40s at that time. And I didn't even know what it was. That was weird. And then they started happening more and more because I was in this stress stage, and that was perimenopause, like showing up, being like, welcome to hell. And then fast forward. So that was 2018. And then 2019, they slowed down. 2020, I hardly had any, maybe at all. And then 2021, February of 2021, it was like oh my gosh, like I was getting them 15 to 20 times a day, multiple, I mean, probably more than that. I was not sleeping. I was having these night sweats that were horrific. So if you don't get enough sleep, period, I don't care who you are, that's going to affect your mental health. And I was so miserable. I was like not myself. I was bawling. I was tired. I was just all the things. And so I started looking for a doctor like an integrative health doctor that specialized in menopause. So I started calling around, and the wait list for these doctors was like, we can see you in 7 months. I was like, I'm not going to be here in 7 months. Like I have never been suicidal before in my life, but I was so beyond, like I wasn't even sleeping. So my mind was not normal anymore. I don't know how to explain it. It was just the weirdest feeling. And then I ended up, finding a local doctor who on her website specialized in HRT. And I was like, thank God this is going to save me. And so I went in, and the paper they put on the table for women, I'm like sweating through it. It's like sticking to my butt because like I'd sweat through it with a hot flash. And she comes in, and I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. And she's like, oh, well, it will pass. She was so dismissive about it.
Yeah.
And I said, I am not sleeping. I start bawling. I am not sleeping. She's like, I don't know much about HRT. I'm like, called your office before I made this appointment. And they said, yes, you specialize in this. And I'm just bawling because she was like my beacon of hope, or what I placed her as, maybe my beacon of hope. She's like, I'm sorry. Do you still want to do your annual check? It was a horrible experience. So she left the room. I'm like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I've lost hope. And I walk out, and she's holding these boxes because, of course, the pandemic had happened the year before. And so these are like almost expired. There was like 6 months left of some pharmaceutical company that had dropped off bioidenticals, which is like estradiol and progesterone in one pill. She's like, do you want these? It's like, and I was like, yes, and I took them with me. And then I went home, and I spent all the spare time I had trying to find somebody who actually specialized in it. And it was the same thing. I was getting these huge wait lists. And then my friend said, call a compounding pharmacy and see if they can recommend something, because a lot of doctors that specialize in menopause will do like specific dosages for women for HRT. So I called this very specialized compounding pharmacy. They were like, well, we can tell you who we get referrals from. So it was through that I found a doctor, and he was online. He spent an hour with me online. He's not practicing anymore, which is a shame, because otherwise I'd be happy to share his info. But he spent an hour with me, told me exactly what I needed to take, both on the natural front and the HRT front. And so I did that. And then in December, you asked like where I'm at in the journey. So December 2022 was like a period. And then, but I was on these like low dosage of HRT. And then I noticed late last year, late 2023, that I was starting to get hot flashes again, not as frequent as like before, but enough where it was starting to be a little disruptive. And so I was an entrepreneur at that time. I had my own business, so I didn't have good health insurance. And so it was like my friend who was a doctor. I'm like, can you prescribe? I know this is awkward, but can you prescribe the HRT so I don't die? So he prescribed me like a low dose. And then I had some issues come from that. So I found an OBGYN. This is like Kate, so much longer than you asked for, but you did. You did ask.
I did ask. I did.
It's also important too. I want to share this because maybe someone needs to hear this. So I got a new job. I got a job. And while I got the job specifically, I was still doing my own business stuff. But in addition, I'm like, I need insurance. Like I need decent insurance. And so I went to a menopause specialist doctor. And women, if you're listening to this, menopause.org will give you a huge list of this. Find one that will hear you. So I went to this doctor and I was like, hey, I'm kind of having these issues with my HRT. And so she changed my prescriptions. And she also was like, tell me about your family history. So I told her about my family history. My mom died of cancer. My aunt had breast cancer, but survivor. My other aunt had lung cancer, but none of those were genetic. And she's like, okay, I hear you, but we should get genetic testing done. Like, oh, I'm good. Fine. She's like, you should just like, I thought she was like trying to sell me up, they get some money. And I was like, good. And she's like, let's take this little like iPad quiz or whatever. So I did, and I qualified to take this test. And so a month later, I get my result. The results say I'm at high risk for ovarian and breast cancer. Had I not taken that test, I would not have that information. So first of all, talk to your doctor. This is my message. Talk to your doctor. See if you qualify for those tests. If you don't qualify, you can still take the test. It's just about $250. Mine ended up being out of pocket like $50. Okay? Some people get it for free. So anyway, I took the test, got those results. And so in December, I am having surgery to remove my fallopian tubes and my ovaries. Because with ovarian cancer, there is no screening. And so if you're in your menopausal era and you're done having kids and you're high risk for that, talk to your doctor about that. That may be a good choice for you too. Yes. Jump in.
Actually, I had a very similar situation happen to me, except it didn't quite go down the same way in that I ended up having ovarian cancer, the very beginning of it, and going into surgery thinking I was getting one ovary out and waking up and being told I had a radical hysterectomy. And that happened 2 years ago. And for me, I understand that in a way, my doctor did me a favor. But at the same time, there was a lot of questioning. I'm very suspicious of big medical, big pharma, which it sounds like you're a little bit too. If you were like, well, she's just trying to get more money out of me. There's a balance between trusting your doctor and feeling that you have all the information you need to make that decision. So for me personally, I wish my doctor had maybe just taken the one ovary and then had a conversation with me about it. But
that's a major recovery too. Recovery between getting your ovaries out and getting a whole hysterectomy. Radical hysterectomy.
That means that she took both ovaries, both fallopian tubes, my uterus, and my cervix.
Oh, wow.
So
like all the plumbing.
Everything. And your cervix has it's your seat of your womb. It's the entrance to your womb. And there are nerve endings there. There's pleasure there. There's sexual pleasure there. There's lubrication that comes through there. It changes your whole situation in that area. And for me, I wish that I had more informed consent.
I'm so glad you said that. When I went first to my menopause doctor and she is like, because she talked about my option.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm okay getting my ovaries and my fallopian tubes out. She's like, you should just get like your uterus, just get it. And I was like, good, like, I'm going to keep that. And then when I went to my surgeon, he said the same thing. You want me to take it off? I'm like, no, I don't. Like I said, if you see cancer while you're in there,
yeah,
of course.
Right.
Otherwise, no. So this is a good message that we're having pre-surgery. So
yeah.
We'll, overemphasize that with him. But I really do. I think while preventative, which is the course I'm going, and yours was early cancer, which thank God they got it. Kate, can I ask, did you have any symptoms when you?
No. Like I went in for a regular pap smear and she was sort of, put like, how most women, you have a little bit of below your belly button, you have a little bit of and she thought mine looked a little asymmetrical. So she's like, stand up. And she's like pushing on it. She's like, does that hurt? And I said, no. She's like, are you sure? And I said, it doesn't. She's like, that looks funny. I'm going to send you for a ultrasound. And then I had an ultrasound and then I had a transvaginal ultrasound. And she's like, well, your left ovary, it looks like there might be something in there. So the plan was just to take the left ovary out. But when I went into surgery, she opened me up and she didn't like the way I guess I had endometriosis that I wasn't really aware of. Most women have that. I had some fibroids that she didn't like. And she was concerned that the stage 1 ovarian situation that I had was going to spread down the fallopian tube and into my uterus, or maybe had already, even though she didn't really see direct evidence of that. This is the way she explained it to me after the fact. But I kind of felt like she was justifying to me what she had done. Because she could see I was clearly pretty upset about the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that feels kind of intrusive. Like
It was,
kind of
I felt
like,
very violated by it, honestly.
yeah.
You know, I
Sorry.
never went back to, thank you. I never went back to her after my like second post-surgical to make sure that everything had healed up or whatever. And the reason why I didn't go back to her, and again, this is good information for any woman that's listening to this that may be, because ovarian cancer, reproductive cancers are so common. So common. And ovarian cancer is the silent killer. Like you could have no idea. There's no pain. There's maybe bloating, maybe no bloating. You could just be like, well, I got a little chub because I'm going through menopause. You know, I got a little puff. You know, I have that little menopause belly now. You know, we all write it off. And it's very easy to not know that something's going on. So the reason why I stopped going to her was not just because I felt that she had overdone the surgery or overplayed her hand, but because she insisted on giving me a pap smear like 6 months after my surgery. And I'm like, excuse me, but if I have no cervix, what are you smearing? And she didn't have I have enough medical knowledge. I'm a clinical social worker. I've worked in hospitals. I have enough medical knowledge to be like, well, can you explain to me what exactly are you smearing? And I was like, what is this woman doing? You know, why do I need that?
Yeah.
And she didn't give me like an explanation that made any sense to me. I was just like, okay, well, I think I'm going to find another doctor.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry that happened to you.
I'm sorry it's happening to you. I'm sorry that you have to have this surgery. It's scary.
It is scary, but it's also proactive, right?
It is.
In my case, my boss at one of the gyms I teach at, she is going through all the treatments for her ovarian cancer. And so it, like you said, it is a silent killer. So I feel like so grateful I have the information from this genetic testing. And by the way, if anyone goes to genetic testing, there's pluses and minuses, right? You can be proactive if it's a treatable something, but if you find out you have a propensity or higher propensity for some type of condition, then it can be scary. And so then you have to be prepared to deal with that. So for breast cancer, if you're a high risk for breast cancer, and mine's not like, I don't have the BRCA, which is
right. I was going to ask you if you had BRCA, did you have hers? Is it hers?
It's RAD 51, but it's not RAD.
Not so rad. Not so rad as it turns out.
As it turns out, is not. So for if you're screening, which I'm going through right now for the breast cancer, so I just did my mammogram, and then I'll have to do an ultrasound, and then every 6 months it'll be one or the other. So instead of that yearly mammogram, it's the every 6 months. You just take a more preventative approach to it. So.
Yeah.
Wow, we totally so naked at 50. But all this to say, like as women and men have their thing they're going through.
Sure.
So we all have changes, right? And so I'm now in that. Maybe this is one of the things about turning 50 is I'm now at like even more so. I felt like I was before, but man, I just like knowledge is power. If there's something I can say that will help somebody's life, take it. Right?
Absolutely.
Like take it, digest it, see if it applies to you or not. But like, I'm not afraid to talk about anything.
Yeah.
So when you asked about where are you at menopause? Well, let me tell you about every hot flash.
It's actually really helpful because I think more women we have to stop the stigma and the shame around this. And just before we go on to talk more about stigma and shame and menopause, I do want to say, like, I'm grateful, incredibly grateful that I didn't have to go through chemo and radiation and all those things, because I don't know if emotionally, if I could have handled that. You know, I was already so upset about everything else, to have the extra burden of having to deal with all the other medical implications would have been just devastating. And I know women go through it every day. Women die of it. So, you know, maybe what pissed me off, you know, when I woke up and found out that she had, you know, basically taken everything, like maybe she saved my life. You know, maybe I'm being too hard on her. Maybe I'm not being, you know, educated enough about it.
Well, it's interesting, Kate. I'm such a believer in like pass that cross that teaches things. Maybe our message, the reason we're talking today is for you to have that thought. And B, maybe it's for me to remind my doctor to leave my uterus the hell alone if he doesn't say anything. Like,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, we're having this conversation, and whoever's listening to this, maybe you're supposed to be listening to this for a reason today.
Absolutely. And reproductive cancers can spread to your bowel, your bladder. Like, you don't want any part of that, you know? None of us do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you're allowed to ask your doctor as many questions as you need to.
Yeah.
You know?
And should, but
And
it's still
should.
empowered. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Still empowered to do so. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when did you start writing this book?
Okay. Yes.
Back to your book.
To my book. So let's leave our uteruses to the side. Our ovaries to the side. No pun intended. Okay. So I started doing the experiences in January. I started writing about and podcasting about it in January, but I started writing about it in March. And this is crazy. My book story is crazy because it was my number 50 experience. My 50 of the 50 was writing and publishing a book. And so I got a little publishing company. So again, if someone needs to hear this, if you have a book in your heart and a story you want to tell, you don't have to write all those query letters of times past. Now you can employ a self-publishing company that can help. And so I interviewed several, and I found one that, because my turnaround time was going to be so quick. And so I needed someone who had the staffing and could help that happen. So I put a mock together on Canva of what my cover was, and then gave it to their designer to clean up a bit. So all this to say, while I was still doing my last of my experiences, my publisher put a draft on Amazon so that pre-orders could happen through the publishing. And Amazon said, we don't do print publishing pre-orders. We only do Kindle pre-orders. And so my publisher said, okay, well, if you make an exception, great. But if not, no problem. So just so we could do the Kindle pre-order, she left the draft in there. 3 days later, my book is not finished being written. Keep this in mind. Just the draft is there. My friend said, I ordered your book today. I said, and I go, and sure enough, it is showing on Amazon literally a month before it's supposed to be released as a pre-order. And I was like, oh, maybe they did make the exception. So I shared with some people, hey, my book's there. It became a bestseller in 2 days on Amazon in several different Amazon categories. And I was like, this is amazing. And then 3 days later, it disappeared from Amazon. And then 2 days after that, my draft was sent to every single person who ordered my book.
Oh my God.
And so that was fun. And so my publishing company and I have been trying to work with Amazon KDP, which is the company Amazon uses to print books, to rectify this. And Amazon KDP is like, it's impossible. It's like the biggest gaslighting thing ever. We don't print books before they're released. All the things. I'm like, you print them. So anyway, that never got resolved. So we went through Ingram Sparks, which is another publishing company, to release it. And they're like a third party kind of publisher. And so they'll put it on Barnes & Noble, and they'll put it on Amazon, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, yeah, so it went live again a few days ago. It went back to a bestseller status, which was really awesome. And then my friend messaged me, and she said, they sent the book again, and it's the draft again. So the good news is, I think those were the last of the tweaks. My publisher had pulled the draft as soon as all this happened. So it may have just been stored, or they had extra book copies. I don't know what Amazon did. But now, most of the people now who have ordered it are getting it on the release date, December 10th. They're not getting the junky, I call it the sloppy copy. But what an experience. Who knew my 50th experience would turn out to be a bestseller and a sloppy copy?
So wait, so the physical sloppy copy went out to all those people?
All those people.
Oh my goodness. Were there red lines in it and typos?
So it was a printed, with my cover, a printed version of the book, missing table of contents, having things that said untitled, missing several chapters. Because so I'd given my publisher up to how many experiences I had, but it still hadn't gone through the editing process. It went through 3 editing processes. I know. So you can imagine, are you thinking this is what happened? But I've had to really find some humor with this,
Sure.
but it is definitely not been, I mean, and either side, I never expected it to be a bestseller. I also never expected it to be the draft copy that got sent. But, these are things out of our hands.
There's a lesson, there's a lesson about, because every time you put yourself out in the world in your authentic, messy self, you give other people permission to also take risks and try things. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good reframe. Yeah. And another reframe is at least I don't know everyone who ordered the book, but at least most of the people who ordered the book loved me enough to have ordered my book and know me and understand that. I mean, much better if it was it would have been much worse if it was 5,000 copies, right? Like that went out to the world. So I just think it's been a very interesting journey for me. One I was not expecting, but back to what the book is
right.
So it's 3 parts, right? So the first part is for the reader to reflect back on their first 50 years. The second part of the book is for the reader to how they want to move forward. How do you want to enter this next decade of your life? And then the last part are the 50 experiences I did to inspire people to make their own. So that's what the book is about.
Did you go into the experiences knowing all 50 you were going to do, or did that evolve as you were having your adventure?
Yeah, I love that question. Both. So there were probably 10 or 15 that I was I want to go on a higher balloon ride. I want to take a Tai Chi lesson, right? There were and I didn't want them all to be this huge things. I didn't jump out of a plane, but that's what people always ask. Did you jump out of a plane? I'm like, no, because that's not my experience. I want to experience. But there were 10 or 15 that I was yeah, I definitely want to do these. And then the rest evolved. And it was really cool because when you open, that flow just comes to you and you're like, oh my God, this would be a new experience for me. So a lot of it came in time in a really cool way. For sure.
Tell me about what was the most expansive experience for you. What was the one that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I waited this whole time to do this?
With 2. Can I share 2?
Yeah.
I think these are the 2. People ask me, what was your favorite experience? I'm like, they all had their thing, right? They all had their thing, but I feel expansiveness. The first one was I walked the Camino.
I want to do that so badly.
Well, this is your other message today. Go do it. So I did a part of it and I was supposed to go. It was a whole thing. You can read about the book, but it was amazing. And it was so different than I thought it was going to be for me. So that was an amazing experience.
So wait, before we jump off of that one, I want to touch on that one first a little bit. First of all, for the people who don't know what El Camino is, give them a little synopsis and then tell me why did you choose to do it and what did it mean to you and what did you get out of it?
The Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage. So people have been doing it for hundreds of years. And you start in France or Portugal or parts of Spain and you end up in the northern part of Spain by the Santiago Cathedral. And so it was this pilgrimage of St. James. And it's been said in the 8th or 9th century, they moved the bones of James and buried him under this cathedral. And so people have made these pilgrimages to go there. And so for centuries, it was this holy walk. And now people do it still for that. But then other people do it when there's a change in their life. Maybe they overcame something, got divorced, just graduated high school or college, whatever it is. People do it for different adventure, whatever.
Why did you choose to do it?
I chose to do it. It's been on my mind. It's been on my radar for several years. And it sounds like, Kate, it's been on yours as well. And so the reason it fell into my lap sort of was I was going in for a job interview. And I thought, if once I go for this job interview, I'm not going to have vacation time for a while. And I'd been laid off. Our department had been laid off the previous year. So I'd had all this time to kind of do my business and expand and travel. And I was like, if I want to get one more trip in, it's going to be something that's going to mean a lot to me. And so I was like, I'm going to do a Camino. And I couldn't do the whole thing. The whole Camino is 500 miles. In order to qualify for the certificate, you actually can get a certificate. You have to do, I think it's 100 or 110 kilometers, which I think is roughly 73 miles maybe. And so I was like, okay, I have enough time to do enough to like, do a part of the Camino. So that's why I chose to do it. It's just, I knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it forever, and the like time fit.
What was it? Was it like a beautiful spiritual experience for you? Did you do it alone?
I did do it alone. Yes, it was a very beautiful experience for me. I'm a fitness instructor on the side, and I've been doing this for a long time on the side. And I thought, no problem. I teach Zumba, I teach Tabata. My cardio is great. I always hide blah, blah, blah. And I didn't train. It was such a last minute decision. I literally like bought the ticket and left 2 weeks later. So I did not train at all. And I don't recommend doing it without training, Kate. So make sure you do. So halfway through the first day, which was a 22-mile walk for me, I felt it in my knees so badly that I couldn't walk. And they say, there's this like quote, like the Camino will give you what you need and the Camino provides. Those are two things you hear a lot. And I get the chills just thinking about it. Like I had so many people come to my aid, spiritual experiences and experience with God. Like it was very impactful. So yeah, very spiritual.
Yeah, I absolutely want to do it. And I'm one of those people, I walk 6.5 to 7 miles every morning. So I'm like, oh, I could do it no problem. But I know that that's probably not true. I probably should train. I should probably walk with a backpack. I live in Florida. Florida is really flat. I'm sure Spain is not flat. So yeah.
And you can have someone like order your carry-on for you and just have a light backpack. That's what I did. But it's still like my knees were toast. So definitely train. But it's good. 6 or 7 miles is a good start. But yeah, just train or break it up so you're only doing 6 or 7 miles a day.
So what was the other most impactful, expansive experience for you?
So when I got down to my last, I had to start because I was coming up against a deadline, right? A book deadline. And so I had to schedule out my last. And I shared it with a guy friend of mine. And he was like, oh, Staci, come on. Not one of those is like, I mean, they were great. I was like, oh, right, I'm getting it in, la, la, la. And he's like, not one of those is like stretching you, like kind of like do better. And so I ended up getting a day pass, got on a plane to Colorado, and I went to a nudist resort.
Oh my God.
And that one was expansive for other reasons, but it is expansive because it was so far out of my normal comfort zone.
So you were literally naked at 50.
Yeah. And it really solidified the title of the book.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. What was surprising about that?
It was surprising. Like at first you're like, I'm going to take off all my clothes. Like what? It was surprising how quickly you adapt once you got past all the penises. Like how quickly you adapt to like, this doesn't feel weird. I went hiking with like 2 men and it was so normal. Like by the end of my stay, we were like hiking, and I didn't care about my cellulite, I was just out there like hiking. And it was very freeing. It was very, very freeing. So yeah, it was very expansive in a very different way than the Camino was.
I bet. I guess it helps you just feel like, okay, I'm a normal human among normal humans, and I'm no better or no worse than anybody else. My body is no better or worse than anybody else's. It's all just a variation of humanity, right?
Yeah. It was cool too because one of the people I talked with was a NASA scientist. And it didn't matter what anyone did for a living. We were all naked. You know what I mean? It was so cool to hear his stories, but like we put so much on the external, and it was almost like freeing from that. So yeah, that was a very memorable experience.
Yeah. I think that is something that comes with being in this stage of life, is that we drop that hierarchy of looking around and comparing ourselves to other people. I went on a retreat last year, and I was very lucky in that I did not do a lot of research about the retreat. I just sort of saw it and signed up. I was going to be in the Northeast anyway. I was going up to see Esther Hicks, and I was like, oh, this is nearby. I'm just going to sign up for this. This is in Rhode Island. It's close enough to where I'll be. I'll just get on the Amtrak and I'll go. And it was a retreat for women 50. And I've been a career social worker for 20 something years. and that's like sort of at a certain level, right? You're not going to make a ton of money. You're not going to have a ton of influence. You're helping people where they are. It's not like a high level corporate job, right? And I get there, and the women who were there were like the CEO of this and the CEO of that. And I'm the medical director at blah, blah, blah medical school. And I'm this and I'm that. And I could have done a big number on myself. Like, who am I? I'm nobody. My income's a third of everybody here. I could have really, but instead I allowed myself to be in that energy and be like, wow, we're all just people. Like, nobody's any better than me or whatever. Like, instead I was able to be one of the crowd instead of like being in a corner. I think like 10 years ago, I went like, I don't belong here. I'm going to leave early. I'm just going to get my Amtrak back to New York and just feel bad about myself,
I love that too. When you said like, we're just all humans doing human things. Like we all are going to die. Like we're all going to die. So like, you're right. The hierarchy that we really focus on kind of starts fading. It just becomes exhausting, I think, a little bit, even for the people on top of that hierarchy. Like it worked for them for a long time. And then I think it's like, this is also exhausting to have to show up for life in this position as well. So yeah, that's a good call out that it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about like, yeah, we're all going to die. Like leaving the matrix of comparing yourself to people and getting stuck in who you are and what you do and how much you have it falls away when you've had an illness. It falls away when you've had loss. Because I think you get to this age, some shit's happened to you. And you can't be so focused on all the superficial crap. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts that we have at this age, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think that is almost a gift of like perimenopause and menopause too. It helps you shift there. Maybe you wouldn't choose it, but then when you get there, you're like, okay, all right, kind of like my mindset now. It's a lot more like, do I want to?
Yeah.
Is that something? Yeah, like. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful time of life. And I hope the book inspires people. I really do. I hope it inspires people who may be in that golden girl self-taught, or what was the facts of life person you said?
Mrs. Garrett.
Garrett, yeah, Mrs. Garrett, like, which it's so funny. They all had very hairsprayed hair.
They did.
Like, you know what I mean? Whatever the style was, it was just like really hairsprayed.
It was very stiff and helmety.
Very stiff. It was very stiff. So shake it out and go be whoever you want to be. Not supposed to.
Absolutely. Can you imagine? Actually, which one did you say you were? Did you say you're not?
I feel like I'm a little of all of them. I'm a little ditzy like Rose. I'm a little sometimes sexy, but not totally sexy like Blanche. I'm a little frank like Dorothy, and whatever the mom's name was.
Sophia.
Love her. She's just, they're all like gems. It's like, if we're just going to go deeper into the Golden Girls, like they're all a part of us. You know what I mean? We all have those sides to us. It's just whatever is kind of being displayed for whatever reason at the time in our life. But we're kind of all of that, right?
Yeah. I definitely have my Sophia, like no filter moments where I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Okay. I'm not there yet, but I hope to be. Yeah.
So what's next for you? Are you going to have like 51 adventures, 52 adventures, 53 adventures, 58 adventures? Are you just going to keep going and adding each year?
So I get asked this a lot. I think next year, well, first of all, the editor, the one who edited my book at the publishing company, he's like, hey, I have an idea for you. And so his idea, which I think I'm going to expand with when I can catch my breath, once the book's actually in the world, the correct book, I would like to invite a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old to take this same adventure and write a book at that stage and kind of make it a whole thing, like decade, celebrating the decades but the requirement will be two things, no matter your age, is you have to go to a nudist resort and you have to write a book. So that's what I'm hoping. But in the meantime, I would like to, in 2025 at some point, put together a community where people support each other who are really trying to live this full best life and want to do it in a container. Coaching a little bit. I mean, like I said, I'm a board certified coach. I've coached for forever, but not in the formal coaching way, more in like the community coaching. So that's my eventual thing I would like to do. So yeah, I think that's what's next. Get the real book out there and then eventually invite others in.
Wonderful. So the book drops officially on December 10th and it's available on Amazon. I will add a link to the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And people can follow you on Instagram and where else?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at naked@50. You'll see pictures from the experiences there. I'm getting those up. They'll all be up by the time the launch is ready, December 10th. So that's the best place to find me. You can also connect with me on my website, ontheexhale.com. So jump on over to see what's good there. Thanks for having me, Kate. This was fun.
Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.